Hello. The purpose of this video is to encourage you to consider making periodic reality checks, maintenance checks, upkeep checks of your study skills and habits to make sure that they remain as effective as they were when you first started using them. Last week I talked about 4 traps or sins, I called them, that you could fall into regarding your reading skills. And today I just want to talk about one hidden danger that can be lurking out there that can sabotage any and all of your study skills and habits. And of course, I'll also talk about a way out of this or a cure for this problem. I'm assuming that because you're watching a video like this, you're a good student and you would like to be a better student. And the reason I make these videos is to try to help you do just that. I have spent my whole life studying intensively, assiduously, obsessively, languages more than anything else, but other things too. And I have gotten a great deal of experience along the way, sometimes by trial and error and doing things that took me a long time to figure out. And so if by sharing my experience with you, I can make your journey any easier, I feel a sense of responsibility to do that and a sense of pleasure when I hear that I have done so. So I hope that this will be the case today. I would like to talk today about what I call the double-edged sword of habit formation. When it comes to learning, language learning in particular, on the one hand, the formation of a systematic, regular study time is absolutely essential. Learning a language is a lifelong task. Unless you can go and live in it after you've learned it, you need to maintain it and use it. And so if you can find it in yourself to develop a systematic time, be it half an hour a day, every day at the same time of day, 8 in the morning, 8 to 8:30, every morning you do your language work. Something like that is ideal, is, I think, really the key to successful learning. And in that point, there's no double-edged sword there. That formation of the time aspect of the habit is essential. But what do you do within that time? What is the activity? What skills are you using to study during that time? This is where the problem can lurk. Again, if you're studying languages, perhaps you're using an Esmil model book and they talk about doing it in waves, so that's the way you study. Or maybe I've talked about doing it in cycles, you're doing it in a cyclical way, and other people break it down into sentences. So the way you structure your time, you use your time, the things that you do within that half hour, you've probably learned and found the thing that works best for you, and that's why you do it. So what happens when that becomes automatic? That can become a problem. Automaticity is good in terms of habit formation, when we're talking about things like health and hygiene and safety, anything that has to do with motor learning, muscle learning, mechanical learning, the more automatic these things can become, the better. But what about something like physical exercise? I think there it's more commonly known and can be experienced that nobody questions that you should do your 30 minutes a day of exercise. But what happens if you do the same thing all the time? And you will find, inevitably, that you get good results in terms of getting fitter, trimmer, developing muscle initially. But if you keep doing one thing and only one thing, with time that becomes dull and less efficacious. And I have made the case before that study is a form of mental exercise, so I think you can probably see where I'm going there. I think the same thing can happen with your study skills, the things that you do, your activities. When you are studying, if you only do one thing all the time, you might not realize that it is becoming dull, it's becoming less effective. I think it's an observable fact with language learning that there's a high attrition rate. Many people start out learning and stop, don't continue because they hit a plateau or they feel like they're not getting anywhere. In some cases, that's a good thing. You thought you were interested in a language and you realize you're not, and there's another language or something else altogether that you'd rather do. So it's good for you to move on to that. But in many cases, people want to continue learning something that they started learning, and when they stop because they feel like they're not making progress, they get frustrated and they beat themselves up and they feel bad, and that's obviously not a good thing. So I think that there's a relatively easy cure for this, and that is to engage in this reality check of doing a periodic change of pace, doing something different. Keep the temporal half hour or whatever it is that you have, but that activity that you do within that time needs to change from time to time, just to keep it fresh, give the old one a break, and to give yourself a sense of comparison. So however you have been studying, I would say you might want to do this as often as once a month. From the first week of every month, try to do something different. And if you realize that what you've been doing is still working great and fine, go back to it. If not, stay with the new thing or do something different. You might not need to do it so frequently. You might feel like things are going quite well now, so do it once a quarter, at the beginning of spring, summer, winter, and fall. At very least, do this at New Year's, and we're only 4 days away from New Year's Day. I've always been a firm believer in New Year's resolutions and making a clean slate with something, construct like a year in our heads, but it's a good time to make a new beginning, make resolutions, and try something different. So if you have not done this, just to check and make sure that your skills are not getting dulled by use, give them a break, give something else to do. Please consider doing this, and hopefully doing this and other ways, your 2022 will get off to a great start. My 2022, I mentioned before in the previous video and a couple of others, in early 2022, as soon as I can get some of the logistical and mechanics out, taken care of, I intend to open a virtual academy. I've talked about and I've mentioned about opening an academy of my own for many years now, but I always imagined it as being a physical place. People suggested I do it virtually. I couldn't conceive of that, but during these COVID lockdowns, I got experience with Zoom delivery of a form of instruction that I found actually works wonderfully, and that is to do small group discussions, not to help people learn languages, but to help them become independent readers of the language. So after you have already gotten to an intermediate level, to come and to engage in small group discussions, reading literature and talking about it, is a great way to get over that hump and then become hopefully an independent reader on your own. And if you were to do this kind of thing with me, then while we're discussing literature in various languages, we can also discuss things like study habits on a one-to-one personal level. But in the meantime, I hope that videos such as this are useful and helpful to you, and I will talk to you again next year. Happy New Year.